So welcome folks. Welcome to the first part of what's going to be the most exciting series that you attended in many years. So we are going to talk about personal finance. That's what we'll do today and next few months. So so let's start with what, right? So what is personal finance? So personal finance is basically the decisions that you make, the financial decisions that you make and the activities you do. That's what it is. This is a course that will help you better make those decisions and activities, right? Now, what are the most important things that you decide, financial activities and decisions? Well, one is the income, how you earn, how you spend, and then how you save, which is what budgeting is all about. And then where you save, right? In what kind of investments do you save in? The other financial decision that you make later on in your life is about housing. You buy a rent, mortgage, insurance planning, health insurance, life insurance, and trust planning, estate planning, and then retirement planning, right? When do you retire? When can you call it quits? And how do you retire? So it is a huge area of study. In fact, each one of this bullet point is actually a department in a big university. So, you know, it'll take a long years to cover everything. But what I will try to do in this series of lectures is just cover the salient points so that you have within you the tool set that you need to make better financial decisions. The next question, you know, you would ask and I would want to answer is why? Why should you care about personal finance? And the reason is because all of us want a strive for financial freedom. We want to be independent, right? We don't want to be dependent on anyone for our financial needs. For example, most of us are dependent on our employers for our financial need because they give us salary, which is what we need to buy stuff and live our life. If we are financially independent, we don't have to rely on them. We can do what we want. We can do the kind of work we want to do without the fear of losing the job. We can choose not to work if we have enough money for that matter. And you know, all of us generally achieve financial independence later in our life. We call that retirement. Once you retire, you know, you are independent. You can do within means what you want to do. So the point here is how can you make financial decisions so that you achieve financial freedom earlier, right? And that's what we'll talk about. But before we go ahead, I would like to bring to your attention the current state of affair in America as it you know, pertains to financial literacy. So according to the National Financial Educators Council, in last year, 2020, average American adult lost about $1,800 on decisions that were made because they were not financially literate. Stuff such as credit card fees, bank overdraft fees, buying useless stuff, right? So one would think that, you know, $1,800 is not a lot. But do you want to guess how much does this financial illiteracy cost you, right? Over your lifetime? Or let's just keep it narrow for next 30, 40 years. If you keep on wasting $1,800, how much would it amount to? So what do you think is the correct answer? Right? And, you know, the normal person would say it's $72,000 because, you know, 1,800 times 30 is 72. But the irony is that that's not the right answer. That's the answer if you take all this money and stuff it in a mattress. But people don't, you shouldn't do that. You should put it in a bank. And if you put this $1,800 in a bank every year, you would have about $172,000. But if you put that money instead of in a bank in a stock market, right, you would have over $1.7 million. Right. So the irony is that you don't even know how much money you're losing because you don't have financial literacy, because you can't do this calculation. Now, this 1.7 million, right, which an average American loses in their lifetime because of the bad financial choice they make, is enough to buy you your financial freedom, right? It is the cost of a couple of houses. It is more than enough to retire on. It is enough to buy college education for your grandkids, so you don't have to choose your favorite grandkid. Everyone is going to get tuition paid by grandparents. So we are here to make sure that we don't make these mistakes, right? This right here is, your financials. $1.7 million is your financial independence. So let's start the journey. And we will start with the first bullet point in this 7 chapters, the bullet point of income, right? So to give you a background on income, the median household income of America is around 67,000, right? This is as of 2020, so a couple of years old. I think might have gone up or down a little, but in the same range. And which by median, I mean that half of the households in America earn more than $67,000 and half earn less than $67,000, right? So if you look at the infographic on the right, it's a nice infographic that describes American household. Each square is basically a percent, so it's 100 squares, 100%. And if you look at the top corner, right, that is the blue color, and that is about 18% of Americans who live below $25,000, right? Now, $26,000 is the poverty line for a family of 4. So about 18% of Americans live below poverty line, right? The one on the purple on the left corner represent people who earn between $25,000 and $50,000, right? So if you look at the bottom left picture below, the purple and the blue squares, right? We are talking about 38% of the people who are making less than $50,000 who belong to lower income class, right? And if you look at the middle part, right, that represents about 44%. These are the people who make between $50,000 to $150,000 a year, the households. And that would constitute what we call middle class. Note that middle class right now is 44%. It used to be 60% in the 70s. So middle class in America has really shrunk a lot in past 3-4 decades. But what is interesting is the right corner, the yellow houses, yellow and the orange houses. You can look at the picture down below onto your right side. They represent upper class, people who earn more than $150,000, households that earn more than $150,000. And on the yellow, the 10% is people who the households that are earning over $200,000, right? So our aim is to be on that yellow corner. And how do you get to the square? Well, if you look closely, right, the difference, one of the main difference between the people who are earning $200,000 and who are below the poverty line is the kind of profession they have, right? So people who live in the yellow squares are generally dual income professionals, physicians, psychiatrists, engineers, chief executives, and people on the left side are generally cashiers, personal care aides, food and beverage workers, right? So basically the point we're trying to make is choose your profession wisely. It does affect your income a lot. Looking at income in a different way to slice and dice it is by race. So, it shouldn't come as a surprise, but Asians, they count as, they make about $100,000 a year. And as you go down, like Blacks and Hispanics, they make about $48,000. So there is a big divide in income when we break it down by race. And why is that? Well, that is a topic for another series of lectures, which we'll not cover here. But one thing that, one of the factors that basically is responsible for this dispersion is the education level, right? So education level is a big component that drives this discrepancy. And to go talk a little bit about education level, I have one more chart here that should drive the point home. The red lines, you see the deep red lines, they tell you income of workers age of 25 to 34. The red line is males, the pink line is females. So females, they make less than male. It's well known, it's not right, but that's how it is right now. Things are changing. But what is important to note here is that as you move up the level, right? So, you high school, you make 32,000. You complete high school, it's 40,000. You get some associate degree, you make 50,000. And then, it really jumps when you make a bachelor's or master's degree. You are up to $70,000 a year, right? So as your education level increases, your salary jumps up between 10 to 30% at each level, right? Next level you make. Now you can see that women, the females, they earn less, but even in females, right, the jump is the same. So at the next level, you make 10 to 30% more than what you made previous level, right? So what we can't do is we cannot control our genes, we cannot control our race, we cannot control whether we are male or female, but what we can control is the education that we get. And what these charts are showing is the more education you have, the more money you can make. And I would like to point out two examples here. If you look at the high school completion, that is this red line and the third red line from the left, and person with the degrees, which is the third line from the right. People who have a college degree make 70,000 average, and high school completion gets you $40,000. So let's just keep these two numbers in mind. And they are very important because of the point that I'm going to make next. So difference in income for a college degree and high school is $30,000, right? 70,000 minus 40,000. So if you just do a ballpark calculation, you graduate high school in 18, college when you're 22, you retire when you are 65, right? And the difference of your salary is $30,000 over, say, 40-year period. So over your lifetime, how much money is that? So I have three options here, right? And I guess most people will choose the first one, which is $30,000 over 40 years, which is about 1.3 million. But that is a naive way of looking at it. That is if you take this money and stuff it in your mattress. You would not do that. You would either keep it in a bank account, in which case this difference amounts to 3.3 million. Or you would put it in a broad money market, a broad stock market, in which case this $30,000 over 40 years reaches $17 million. So that $17 million is the cost of not getting a college degree. Many a times people ask me this question, well, that is nice. You talk about $70 million that you make extra if you get a college degree, but college degree is not free. It is expensive, right? And so to that, I said, fine, let's analyze that too. And so let us bring the cost of college degree into the mix too, right? So college degree costs anywhere from $40,000 in community college to $200,000 when you talk about Ivy Leagues, right? So let's pick the median number, which is $120,000. So if you take this $120,000 and you keep it in a mattress, it stays $120,000. But if you put it in a bank, right, after 40 years, when you're retiring at 65, it would have reached $750,000. So if you compare that to $3.3 million up in the income lifetime difference, it's still a lot less. And if you take this $120,000, which is the cost of college, and you put it in stock market, you still end up with $10 million, which is much, much less than $70 million that you would have made extra if you got a college degree. So even accounting for the cost of college, which by the way is way too high, it's running out of control, and I totally agree. But even if you account for that, you're still better off by $7 million if you do get a college degree, right? And also, this is a very simplistic calculation, right? Generally, when you start a job, you don't stay at that. You get raised and you make more money. And generally, when you are a college educated person, your raises are much more. So this equation is at low end, the estimates at lower end. I think in reality, the difference are much more stark, which is what you saw in the picture of median household income that I showed. And remember that, if you graduate as for example, an engineer from a Ivy League school, your starting salary is at $200,000. So what matters is income, and for income, profession does matter. So before I go any further, I would like to talk a little about how I got these numbers, right? These numbers that I'm showing, they might sound unreasonable. I mean, $17 million, $30,000 a month, a year can cause $17 million difference. Doesn't make sense, is what some of you might think. So we'll do a little bit of segue into what is known as compound interest. a small tutorial so that we understand where these numbers are coming from. And it's very important when you are making any decisions about money, always use the compound interest framework. So let's talk about that for a few. Albert Einstein said that the greatest invention of humanity was not his theory of relativity, but compound interest. So what is it? What is it that Einstein thinks is the greatest invention of humanity? So I don't know whether you guys remember high school, but in middle school or high school, you did learn about interest. So interest is what you get if you deposit your money in a bank. These days, the interest rate that you get from a savings account is about 4%. It used to be 1% 2 years ago. But for the sake of this discussion, we will stick to 10%, right? Because it makes a nice round number. So let's say you invest or you put $100 in your savings bank account, and saving bank accounts has an interest rate of 10%. In the case of simple interest, what happens? What happens is end of a year, you get $10 on your $100, and you take the money and you buy coffee or lunch, right? Next year again, end of second year, you get $10 more, you use the money, you buy another cup of coffee or two, and so on and so forth. So after 10 years, you would have had, earned $100 on your initial investment of $100 for a total of $200, right? And if you keep doing that, end of 30 years, you would have had left with $400, right? So that is simple interest. Now, typically, no one really does simple interest other than some bonds where you take the coupon out, but we'll not talk about that in this class. We'll talk about that in next class. Now, the way compound interest works is just one small difference. The difference is that at the end of year one, when you get those $10 of interest, you don't take it home. You don't buy coffee with it or spend it on lunch. But what you do is you take the money and you put it back into the bank. So now in year two, instead of $100, you have $110, right? And you let that grow. And so at the end of the year, those $110 would become 11 instead of 10, right? You take that, you put it back into the bank. So the next year you start at $121. So it keeps on building little by little every year. So end of 10 years now, what happens? So instead of $200 that you had when you had simple interest, you have $259. So that's, you would say that's, hey, I mean, that's not a lot of money, right? That is about 30% more than simple interest. And in my previous slide, I was talking about numbers that were in millions. So you would think that doesn't make sense. But the power of compounding comes with time. So in 10 years, the difference is not too much. But in 30 years, this $100 would have grown to $1,700 as opposed to just $400 was simple interest. So now we are talking about a difference of 400 or 500%, right? That's the power of compound interest. It's a simple change. All you're doing is taking the interest and adding it to principal. It's a small change, but it changes the result dramatically. The famous Greek philosopher Archimedes said once that, give me a firm place to stand and a lever and I can move the earth. Well, compounding is like a lever, right? Just as how small force can move pyramid, small amount can make millions given enough time, right? To drive the point home, I have this chart that I made. It's the same thing. So simple interest is the blue line, compound interest is the red line. So if you look at first 4, 5, 6 years, you don't see any difference. They both look the same. At year 10, you start seeing some difference. But as you go ahead, right, and as you are approaching year 2021, you start seeing how much more compound interest yields as opposed to simple interest, right? And the main multiplier here is time, right? Give it enough time and you can just grow it to astronomical number. And to make it more clear as to why that happens is if you look at the chart, the growth rate of interest. Simple interest is a straight line, the blue line. The compound interest is a curve, right? It's like a parabola, and it just increases as the time goes by. So if you were to go to 40 or 50 years, this red line will overshoot my screen, right? It'll become 100,000 to $1 million. That's how fast it goes. And Just to give you a little bit of math behind it, I don't want to bore you too much, but I want you to have this slide in case you forget. The way to calculate compound interest is very simple. You take the interest you get from first year, add it to the principal, and you have a new principal, and then you calculate 10% on that principal. So it becomes $11. You take $11 and you add it to the previous principal. You get $121 as your principal in year 3, and that gives you $12, right? So it's just very simple way of calculating it. Just need to keep track of how much interest you make. And the formula for it is on the right side. I don't think I would go and try to derive the formula for you. It would be, it's a waste of time. But basically, just look at the blue equation on the bottom, that the amount of money you have at the end of year end, or end of year 30, and is the number of years, is basically equal to the initial principal you had and the interest rate, and the multiplier is this power n that you raise your rate to, right? So you have interest rate and you raise it to the power n, and that is what multiplies it. And whenever you have these power equations, that's when you see this growth rate. The curve that you see up here, right? It's not straight line, it's curving. It comes because of that power, the n, right? So remember this equation. It's very simple, right? P0 is your initial money, $100. R is your interest rate, in this case 10% of 0.1. So $100 times 1.1, and n is the number of years. So if you put n is equal to 30, r is equal to 0.1, so you get that number, the $1,700 that we saw. Let me give you an example of why this thing is so important. In the year 1626, right, May 24th, there was this Dutchman called Peter Minuit. Now, he purchased the island of Manhattan from the natives, and he paid about $24, right? People say that accounting, even if you take into account inflation, that is the best trade he made. It's called the greatest trade ever made. I think there's a book written on it too. And that is the common narrative, right? But I would, like to offer a different viewpoint here, right? I think that was not the best trade he could have made. In fact, the people who sold the land probably could have made a lot more money if they had invested it properly. Or in this case, if Peter, instead of buying Manhattan, had put that money to work, how much do you think it would be worth, right? So we use this equation, right? P0 is $24, right? Rate of interest is 10%. If you put it in stock market, 4% if you put it in bank account. And n is the number of years. So 1626 was about 400 years ago. So if you just put in a bank instead of buying Manhattan, how much would it be worth? So there are 3 numbers in front of you. Can you guess how much this money would have been worth? The correct answer is if they had put the money in stock market, it would have been worth $650,000 trillion. But if they had just kept it in bank, in their savings account, it would be worth $6 trillion. For comparison, if you go and buy all the real estate in Manhattan, it is just $2 trillion. So I don't know whether that was a good trade or not. I think it was a bad trade. Peter should have kept this money in the bank, and he would be 3 times better off than he was when he bought Manhattan. This right here is the power of compounding. So what have we learned so far? Well, we have learned that compound interest generates a lot of wealth, right? Money can become really big with the power of compounding. But for the power of compounding to work, you need a long time frame, and you need a good interest rate. A difference between an interest rate of 10% and 30% over a time period of 40 is more than 100 times, right? So small change in interest can cause a huge change in end value in 40 years time. And I say 40 years because that's a typical time horizon for people who are entering the workforce and when they retire. Stock market over long term has given over 10%. So that's why, that's a good way to invest money. Buy S&P 500 ETFs and just forget about it. But what is important is not just the rate of interest, the time frame, but also the initial seed investment, right? So you need to start with a big capital to be able to use the leveraging power of compound interest, right? And so make sure that you start with initial seed capital that is large. And to get that, you need to get a degree, college education, you need to start saving, right? So saving is a very important thing. So internalize this equation, right? Make sure that all the financial decisions you make are based off this equation. Remember, this equation is a double-edged sword. It works for you. It can generate money. But if you have debt, credit card debt, or college debt, or any debt, this equation works against you, because when you pay interest on a debt, it also compounds. So it is a very important equation that you should use when you take loans out and when you are saving. And your aim when you are saving is to maximize this P0, which is the initial investment, and the rate of return, right? And we'll talk about how to do all that. And when you have loans, your aim should be to minimize P0, minimize R, minimize M, right? So just keep that in mind, but remember the equation. So we have talked a little bit about income as to how to make sure that you generate maximum income possible, which is by college education. Now, again, there are a lot of exceptions, but that's generally for average person, that's the way to go. Let us talk about the second thing, that is the discipline, the discipline of saving, right? And that starts from what is known as budgeting. And I think that is another important aspect that people don't pay enough attention to. So we'll spend some time on budgeting. There's a very famous quote. I think it's attributed to Mark Twain, but might not be him, might be someone else. And the saying is that the happiest person is a person who earns $25 and spends $24. And the saddest person is a person who earns $25 and spends $26, right? Basically, the point is live within your means, save the rest, and let compounding do the work for you. The problem is that money is hard to track off. It's like sand in your fist, right? The tighter you try to grasp, the more it slips through the cracks. So our aim is not to try to hold it tight, but to be mindful of what's happening to our money, where it is going. And generally, what people think is that money, you spend more money on big ticket items like, buying a house, buying a big car, going on a vacation to Europe, right? Buying a big watch. And, we generally try to do a better job of not doing that and keeping that in control. But I don't think we give enough thought to small items, right? You go and buy a coffee, you never think about it. You buy a sandwich for lunch, you don't think about it. But, when you go to work every day, if you spend $5 on coffee, which is what it costs these days in Starbucks, we're talking about $1,500 a year. Eating out lunch, talking about $3,000 a year. Eating out dinner, $6,000. Going out for drinks, it's $5,000. So right here, we are at $18,000. Compare this $18,000 to vacation in Europe per person is less than $5,000. A decent car that you buy or lease or get it on payment, it's $5,000 a year, right? So the fact is that we don't realize how much we spend because we don't keep track of it. I remember, I think it was 10, 12 years ago, I was doing my taxes and I knew how much at the end of the year we made. And I was looking at the savings and it didn't add up. We were saving too little. And I didn't know why. And then I started investigating and I realized that, yes, we keep track of big ticket items, but we do not keep track of small things. And small things is where, we have to be more mindful. So what do? Well, we make a budget. So basically a budget is a plan that you write down to decide how you will spend your money each month. It basically helps you make sure that you have enough for money for every month and that you're saving enough for your future needs. So it sounds very simple, right? I mean, basically you write down how much money you make, your income, you write down what your expenses are, right? You subtract them and you look at the saving. And if it's not enough, you make sure that you either earn more or you spend less. Sounds easy. But it's really not. So let's start with the first step. The first step is easy, right? Like how the income part of it, right? So if you go back, right, the first step is write down how much money you make, what your income is. So it's very simple, right? If you are someone who's living on paycheck or social security, you know what you're getting every month. It is right in your, goes into your bank account. And then, you have interest income. If you have some money in your bank, if you have stocks, you get dividend, you just add them up. If you have rental income, you just add it up. So you know how much money you're getting every month. Some people ask me that, sometimes the money that we get, you deduct 401k, you deduct health insurance. Should we add that back? And I say, no, let it be. Just look at the money you get in your paycheck every month. Don't worry about the deductions. It's useful to look into deduction when you are calculating, like we say, money enough for retirement and stuff. But for this particular purpose of making a budget, let's just stick to what you get in your hand every month, your disposable income, so to speak. Now, for some of us, right, paycheck is not the source of income. They're freelance workers or business owners, and so the money is not constant. You earn more some months, you earn less some months, so that's okay. All you do is you just write it all down, and you can aggregate it by year, right? Because that will smooth out the variation. So use yearly numbers, right? So you know what your income is. That's easy part. The hard part is, and the most important part is tracking your spending. There are a lot of ways of doing that. One is you just write it down in a piece of paper, use Excel spreadsheet. There are, if you Google budgeting templates, you will get lots of templates on spreadsheet, Excel add-ins, Google Sheet add-ins, or just print out PDF printout that you can take and write down your expense. There are a lot of apps too, and I used an app called Toshl, TOSHL. It's still around. I don't use it anymore, but I used to when I found out that I'm not saving enough. And what that app does is, you just, every time you spend, you just put it on the app, and that keeps track of your spending. So these are the basic categories on the right that I have listed. That is where we generally spend money, right? Monthly bills, utilities, phone bill, telephone, internet, streaming services like Netflix. And then you have loans, credit card loans, student loans, mortgage loans, car, bus fare, train fare, gas, and food, right? Eating out, coffee. So whatever you spend, right? Going on vacation, movie, anything. Small thing from buying a cup of coffee for $1 to eating out lunch with a friend, whatever it is, just make sure you keep a track of it, right? I know it's hard. It is very hard. It's easier said than done. I mean, I've done it, and I know it's not easy to do, but you have to. And you don't have to do it forever. Do it for a few months, and that'll give you enough idea as to where you're spending the money. Right? It'll give you good insight as to where the money is going. You'll be more mindful of spending. Okay, so good job. Now we have written all the income and spending, right? And now is what we do. We analyze our spending, right? Are we paying too much for coffee or for eating out? Just remember, right? Like we talk, like if you drink coffee every day, $5, it's $1,500. Compound that for 40 years, we are talking over $1 million. So it is a lot of money. So do not discount $5 a day as something trivial. It will add up to more than $1 million in your lifetime. So anyways, yeah. So are you paying a lot for debt, right? You might have debt, student loans, college loans, credit card, health loans. So are you paying too much on your debt, right? So spending will help you understand. And then once you have an idea of that, analyze where you're spending money, your next step is to make a goal, right? Why are we doing this budgeting? What are your goals? And is your goal to pay down your debt? Is the goal to save for retirement and retire early, right? Are you saving for college education? Are you saving for a house? Write down your goal, right? And make sure they're realistic. And then once you have done that, you have analyzed your spending patterns and you have your goals, then you can plan your budget. And this, I think, is something that we should all do. And write it down if you don't already know this, but have a plan. And the most common plan that people use is called the 50-30-20 rule, right? So it's a rule of thumb, and the plan is you take your money and 50% of the money you use for your needs. So what are your needs? Your housing, your utilities, groceries, car payments. 30% of the money you put it for your wants. So what are your wants? Your wants are TV, shopping, for hobbies. You want to spend money for hobbies, right? Playing golf, collecting perfumes, dining out. And the rest 20% you put it for savings. So let me give you a simple example, right? You look at your paycheck or social security or whatever income you have that you get in your hand or that's deposited in your bank. Let's say it's $6,000 a month. So divide the 50% of that is 3,000. Use that 3,000 for your needs, right? Then 1,800 of that, which is 30%, you use for your wants. So make sure, and this is where the analysis you've done on spending helps. So if you're spending more than 1,800, cut down on your wants. Don't go out. Don't do that. Use it. Go to a cheaper vacation, right? Make sure it is within 30% of your income, your wants, and then make sure you save 20%, right? So in case when you're making $6,000, make sure you save $200 for investment. Now this may not work for everyone, right? If you're older and you haven't saved enough for retirement, you need to save more, right? So reduce your wants, try to reduce your needs to go more into savings. People with lower income do not have enough income to do savings, right? So this will not apply to them. People who live paycheck to paycheck might find it very hard to stick to it. But this should be a great starting point. And if it doesn't work for you, there are a couple of other alternate plans. One is the 70-20-10 rule. It is people when you have too much debt, college or credit card or health costs, what you do is you just take 20% of what you earn and use it for debt repayment, 10% for saving, and the rest 70% to spend wherever you want to as needed for needs and wants. So that is another rule if you have too much debt. But if we have zero debt and you are a kind of person who never carries a credit card balance, so you can use the 80-20 rule, which is that you put 20% of your money into savings and then spend the rest as you see fit. Just make sure you don't have any debt. So if the point here is choose a plan, start with 50-30-20 and stick to it. That's a good starting point. Stick to it. That is the discipline you need, right? And I think the biggest thing in this is discipline is not that hard. What is going to be hard is to make sure you track your spending and you categorize it as wants and needs, analyze it, and make sure that you're living in that 50-30 rule there. Don't spend more than 50 on your needs. Don't spend more than 30 on your wants. And once you internalize that, right, it will become much easier. So we have talked about income a little bit, budgeting. So we have basically a plan, and now we are saving money, right? That's great. But now the question is, how do we save it optimally? How do we grow it optimally? And how do we do it such that we achieve our goals faster, right? And the trick is to invest carefully, early, and deliberately. So we will talk a little bit more about investment today, and then we will cover investments in detail in next class too. So the question that is asked a lot, right? Hey, what do I do with my money, right? Where do I invest? What stocks do I buy? Do you have stock tips? Do you have any asset class? What about cryptocurrency? Should I invest in cryptocurrency? What about bonds, right? And the fact is that there is no straightforward answer, right? There are answers that will probably give you some idea, but there is no silver bullet. The rule of thumb is like for stuff that you need immediately, you don't have a bigger time horizon, you put it in your bank account, in your savings account. And if you have a longer time horizon over a decade, you put it in the stock market, right? But we'll talk about it as we go along today, and more so in the next class. So remember the magic equation we talked about, the equation of compounding, right? What we need is we need a good enough initial investment, which is P0, and we need a good rate, right? Your option as a person, right? You know how much you're making. So P0 is constant for all these investments choices. N is your time horizon, that's constant. You'll retire at 60, 65, 70, right? There's nothing much you can do. But these different investment classes do have different rate, right? And so when you make a choice, you have to, the tendency is going to be to choose the one that has the highest rate of return. And as you can see in the chart, the rate of return is higher as we go down the list. The certificate of deposits and bonds have the lowest returns, and crypto, private equity, venture capital have the highest returns, right? So so one would think it's simple, right? Let's just put all our money in crypto and private equity. But there is a problem, and the problem is that not all returns are created equal, right? Because there's one thing that we haven't talked about, and that is risk. Investments have risk attached to it, right? Some do not. So if you look at CDs, which is certificate of deposits, which is same as saving bank account or money market account, and treasury bonds, they are the safest investment. Certificate of deposit, saving bank account, and money market are insured by FDIC. Treasury bonds are insured by or backed by the US government. So they are as close as you can get to a risk-free asset. So if you have zero risk tolerance, right, you should put in money in these places. The return there right now is somewhere between 3 to 5%. Used to be 1% back 2 years ago, but now it has come up because of all the inflation fighting that Fed is doing. Having said that, the treasury bonds, I think last year, the inflation bonds, they were yielding 10%. So there was a good coupon to be picked up last year. It's gone now. So CDs and money markets are least risky, right? Stocks then are a little bit more risky. And the reason is that when you buy a particular stock, there is a chance that the company might go bankrupt. I mean, look at Bed Bath & Beyond right now, it's going bankrupt, right? So you have to make sure that you do not invest in one single stock and that you invest in a basket of stock. Ideally in S&P 500, you buy the whole index. But even then, they have bear markets. So if you remember, the S&P crashed in 2008. It went from, I think, 3,000 to 666. But right now it's at 4,000. So, it crashes, it comes out, given a long enough time horizon, you will be fine. But if you have a short time horizon, stock market might not be for you because there is no guarantee, right? Real estate, again, is a good investment, but it is illiquid. If you want money today, you can't really sell a house today. It takes time, months to sell a house. And then prices fluctuate. As you have seen, prices of real estate is coming down, right? And being a landlord, again, has its own set of headache, right? And the others like option, crypto, private equity, venture capital are not the one I would recommend. They are for sophisticated investors, and that too in moderation. The big endowment, they invest about 10 to 15% in these asset classes. And I would not cover them at all for this series. We will stick to bond, stocks, real estate, maybe options. So let me just touch briefly on this topic. I'll cover savings today. So saving account are the safest investments, right? You go in your bank account, you can open it, or you can buy these online money market account that American Express offers, Discover Bank offers, and they are the safest thing. You are never going to go lose the money, right? Even if the bank goes bankrupt, you will still be made whole because it is FDIC insured. And the reason you have this, and this is a very important part of your portfolio, is when you have a short time horizon. Let's say you are getting married in a year's time and you have $30,000 that you have saved for marriage. Well, then you put it in money market, right? You still earn 4%. It's something, right? 30,000, 4%. We are talking about $1,200. That's enough for a trip. So you want to save, you want to earn some yield, but you don't want to put it in the stock market, because stock market could tank next year. And when the time comes for you to get married, your 30,000 have become 15,000. So you don't want that, right? You are going to retire soon. You don't want to risk your retirement money with the stock market. You want to keep it safe. So you use money market or savings bank account, right? Now, if you are young and, with young folk with like 10 plus year to retirement, don't put too much money into it. Just put enough money that you would need for a rainy day. Put most of your money in other asset classes. But if you are older, you have retired or close to retirement, then you should put a lot of your money into these asset class, money market fund or treasury bond. All right. So one last thing before we end today's class is I just want to touch a little bit upon stocks. Again, we will cover both these topics extensively in next class. But stocks, right? I just want to talk about stocks. Stocks are relatively safe over long term. They are safe investments if you buy the whole stock market. And the way you buy whole stock market is just by S&P 500 index. The ticker for that is SPY, or NASDAQ, which is QQQ. So basically, when you buy these stocks, you're basically buying the whole market, and that protects you from bankruptcy. So if 3-4 companies go bankrupt, you don't lose much, right? And this broad market index that you buy is safe over long term, and it has shown that since, I don't know, like 1600s, you get more than 10% return a year on that, which is why if you had bought Manhattan, not bought Manhattan, and kept those $24 in stock market, you'd have made $650,000 trillion. So with that, I would open it up for questions. And I have muted every one of you, so you will have to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is really great. Thank you so much.
Hi, Julie.
I've got
Do you have a question?
Yeah, sure. I do have a question. So, you talked about paying money like for rent or for your house as a certain percentage of your income. And then also, having savings as a certain percentage of your income. If you are living in a house, can you consider like paying your mortgage on that house as also being part of savings? Is there any difference in formula based on whether you're paying for your dwelling as rent or as a mortgage?
So if you really want to, okay, so as a rule of, without getting too complicated, as a rule of thumb, no, that the amount of money you pay, and you pay two things, right? If you, as an owner, you pay your mortgage, right, every month, and you pay taxes, right? The school tax, the village tax, and the town tax. All of that should count as your housing expense, right? Now, if you really want to be pedantic about it, what you could do is break down your payment, mortgage payment. And mortgage payment has two parts: the principal repayment and interest. So you can break it down and use the principal repayment as investment, and interest part as expense. However, that's really not the right framework to use, because remember the compounding that I showed you, the equation that I've showed you, it assumes you invest in stock market because that gives you 10%. If you were to use it as savings, right, then your house does not yield you 10% interest every year, right? The appreciation is not that much. So you can do it. Then you'll have to bring out your Excel spreadsheet and write some equations. I don't think you would have time or energy to do that. So just stick to using that payment as a part of expense. It's more conservative to do that. So it's better for you.
Harmeet, it's Donald.
Hey.
At some point, are you going to get into people that are retired
Yes.
and have accumulated an income and how to handle that income?
Yes. So, right. So if you, let's see if I can. Right. So that is the last bullet point. So we'll get there, right? So for you, I think the next slide, next class, we will talk about saving and investment. That would be very useful. And then we will cover retirement planning in that class or maybe the next class. So yes, I will touch upon that, Donald.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harmeet. That was wonderful. I have a question. I think Julie asked about the mortgage. When you have mortgage, you have to pay, you have a principal and the interest. So is it I don't know if it's a smart idea. If you can afford, can you try to pay mortgage if you can, instead of, because you are paying a lot of interest on the mortgage.
So yeah. So that again, this is a big topic. Again, it's towards the later part of the series, right?
Okay.
We will talk a little bit more into details, but to give you an answer, it is yes and no. So let me give you a very simple example. Right now, money market. So if you put money in bank account, right, savings,
Right.
you're getting 4% back, right? If you mortgage rate, right? I'm assuming you all refinance, right? So mortgage rate, people that are paying right now are between 3 to 3.5%, and not the new houses, but the houses when we bought, right? So think about it. If you prepay, so let's say you have $100,000 sitting in your bank, you're earning 4% on it, right? And you have $100,000 worth of mortgage left, and the interest you are paying is 3%. So you're paying less than what you're getting. It makes no sense to do a mortgage prepayment early, right? It really doesn't make sense, because you are earning more on that amount of money from bank than you would than you are paying. So that is a analysis you need to do, looking at your situation. Now, if you were someone who had bought house recently, where the interest mortgage rates are 6% and bank is giving you 4%, then yes, it makes sense to prepay early. But most of us have bought house not this year, but year before this, when the interest rates were lower. And so it doesn't make sense to prepay early. Now, with time, it's possible that interest rate will come down. They'll come down to 1%, 0%. At that point, this would change. My answer would change. And we would talk about that stuff when we talk about mortgage planning, because the other question people ask is, should we buy a house or should we rent a house? And there is, again, no good answer, but we will give you the framework that you can use to answer that question.
Thank you so much, Harmeet, and thank you everyone for joining. And we are looking forward to the next class.
Yes, me too.
Okay.
Take care, guys.